Hello, I want to talk about bladder problems. If you don't have bladder problems, that is awesome because a lot of MS patients do have bladder problems. The most common bladder problems is retention, where they can't empty their bladder. It's like their bladder, you know how things get numb and tingly? It's like their bladder gets numb and tingly, and then it can't realize, oh, I'm full that much. And then you go to the bathroom and then they're like, oh, I'm not full anymore, but you're actually like only halfway. And so you end up going to the bathroom every hour, every 2 hours, and it's ridiculous. So if you don't have any problems like that, good on you. And feel free to, here's a video you can go watch. It'll be entertaining. Click this little Halloween decoration that I have on my desk. Go ahead. Yeah, click that. And you'll entertain yourself there, okay? Okay. Now that we have them gone, lucky bastards getting there and having no bladder problems, but I want to talk about like bladder problems. I want to talk about, especially, I don't know if boys have the same problems that us girls have, but I'm going to talk about like pee and down there and stuff like that. So if you don't want to listen to it, or if you're not worried about it, go ahead, and I won't be offended if you don't watch this video or anything. But okay, so for the past like 6 months, maybe even 7 or 8, ever since before I went into rehab, I had to be catheterized because I wasn't walking well. And I had to go to the bathroom like every 2 hours, even when I was sleeping. So I'd have to get up, go to the bathroom, and then I would fall. And I would fall and, I'm sorry, but pee all over the place, and I would just, it was miserable. And I thought to myself, what the heck am I doing? And then one person said, well, you know, you can get catheterized. And I was like, catheterized? And I was catheterized, and it was uncomfortable, but I didn't have to get up, and I could finally sleep. I was finally could sleep, but then I kept going downhill, and I had to go back in the hospital. And they kept it in, and it was just horrible. And then even after the rehab center, when I came home, they took it out, and I was still having to go every 2 hours, still not being able to sleep, and so I had it put back in. And for a long time, I'm like, I have to go to the urologist. I have to find out what's wrong with my bladder. You know, why am I not emptying all the way? Why is it so hard to start a stream? You know, why is all this happening? So I went to the urologist, and I don't think they've seen anyone with MS, maybe. I'm not quite sure, because don't let this happen to you, okay? When I went to the doctor, they took out my catheter that's been in. They took it out, and then my bladder obviously was empty because I had a catheter in. And they tried to teach me how to self-cath, but the nurse had pulled out my catheter too fast or too hard, and my urethra, the tube that goes into your bladder, began to bleed and stuff. So she would teach me how to self-cath. And what self-catheterization is, you just basically put a tube into your bladder, and your bladder empties, and you take it out right after it empties. You don't keep it in. It's just when you go to the bathroom 1 or 2 times a day or a night, or however many times you need it. But anyway, and then every time she put it in, blood would be coming out with it. And she's like, do you have your period? You keep putting it in your vagina. I'm like, no, I'm not putting it there. I'm not putting it there. And she wouldn't listen. She kept saying the blood and kept blah-blahing on it. And I was like, fine. So I ended up going 3 more months with a permanent catheter. And I was just like, oh. And driving myself nuts. And it hurt, and it was horrible, and things like that. And so I finally went back to the urologist, and I said, I want to self-cath. I want to do it for myself, you know. I don't want this anymore. It hurts, because that was around that time I had the Foley in permanent, and I had the Foley in, and it started hurting. I guess I had tugged it too much and it got stuck in my urethra or something. And it hurt really bad and it was leaking. And I was like, Grah! And then so I have this like nurse that comes out for it. And she would come out and she would take so long that I would cut the little tube and pull it out because the thing that keeps it in, the water that keeps it in, would go out. So I would take out my catheter because it hurt so bad. And one day she goes, don't do that anymore. Don't do that. You know, you can't keep just taking it out because it's leaking, because it hurts. And I was like, okay. So one time I kept it in all night while I was waiting for her, and the bag was full of blood. So I was like, okay, I'm done with this. I'm so done. I'm so over this. I don't want this anymore. I don't want a catheter in anymore. You know, I'm starting to walk more. I don't want it anymore. So I went to the urologist and I said, I want to self-catheterize. You know, if that's the next thing. He was like, well, if that doesn't work, then we can, you know, you can have a surgery that puts a tube straight into your abdomen, and then it just, you know, goes out from there because bladder infections are less likely that way. And I was like, a surgery for a tube to put in my belly? Like permanent? Like for forever ever? And he was like, yeah. I was like, no, I am 23. I'm going to get better. The CCSVI thing cure is like right around the corner. I'm not getting a surgery that's going to be permanent in my belly so I can pee. No. And so I was like, self-catheterization or nothing. And he was like, well, okay, well, you know, you seem really motivated. And so he sent me home with self-catheterization. Okay, now that you have the backstory, self-catheterizing, especially if you're a little overweight like I am, okay, if you're really overweight like I am, it's going to be way difficult, but it's not impossible. I was reading this thing about self-catheterizing, and it was like, oh, if you have a belly, it's hard, maybe even impossible to do it. And I was just like, oh, that's encouraging. So, if you're worried about self-catheterizing and you're like me, don't worry about it. The first few times you do it are really hard and it hurts, and, well, it doesn't like hurt really bad, but you like scrape and blood may come, and I was really freaking out. I was really freaking out about it, but as time went on, I got better and it became easier. And one nurse said, oh, you know, it's not about, okay, the first nurse said, oh, you have to have a mirror and you have to be able to look down there and you have to be able to do that, so you don't put it in your vagina, so you get your urethra. And I was like, okay. The second nurse, the one that gave me the catheter, said, oh, it's all about feel. Don't worry, it's all about feel. Once you know where to feel for it, you'll get it every time. It'll become much easier. So I was like, okay. So I went home and I failed at it for the very first like few times, and then one night I was like, please, I don't want to be getting up at 2 hours at a time. Please let me be able to do this. And I did it, and I felt so much better, and I didn't get up for the next like 4 or 5 hours, and I was so happy that I could sleep. I was just so happy that I could do it. So if you're like me, if you have bladder problems, if you have retention where your bladder doesn't empty all the way and you're having to go all the time, it's really good. Don't let them talk you into that surgery. It's really good to self-cath. I know it's kind of gross and I know it's kind of strange, but it really does help. It's way better than having a Foley in where it's in all the time and you have to have a leg bag and stuff. So just be aware of that, okay? And I hope I helped somebody out there, because boy was I freaking out when I started. So good luck if you're going to start it, and thanks for watching. Bye.